Hi, and welcome to this video. I want to show you a game that I played myself in the Icelandic League in 2016. Now the theme of this game is, well, I would like to say there are two themes. Number one is prophylaxis. What is prophylaxis? If you're not familiar with the term, prophylaxis basically means playing against your opponent's ideas, preventing your opponent's ideas. And the second theme is playing against a low rated player and what you should be doing. And in my opinion, on every move you should be giving your opponent options. So the more options, the more decisions your opponent has to take, the more likely it is that the rating difference matters. And hopefully we will get some situations where this will apply. So I had the white pieces, and the theme of prophylaxis was sort of accentuated by me playing. Well, I wasn't playing, I was the captain of the Icelandic team at the Baku Chess Olympiad. And on the Icelandic team was the legendary Grandmaster Nh8. Johan, if you don't know, he defeated Viktor Korchnoi in a candidate match in 1988 and reached a candidate match against Karpov, so obviously a very strong player. And in some of the games and in the postmortems, he talked a lot about, prophylactic play, just playing against your opponent's ideas. And I was very influenced by that in this game. So I had the white pieces. I opened with c4. We had knight f6, g3, g6, and bishop d2. Now before going on, my opponent in this game, I played him in the Icelandic League before and also in a ton of Blitz games. He is, well, at the time he was rated 2157. And he was a strong youth player, but didn't really devote himself to chess after that. And so the thing I knew about him, he's a solid player and he likes to play the Grunfeld. I know he knows some Grunfeld themes, so I was expecting a Grunfeld here. d5, going into the Grunfeld as expected. I take on d5, I play d4. So we have a fianchetto Grunfeld. I can play e4 here, that's definitely an option. But I had other ideas. I wanted to play a main line after knight f3. So I was expecting him to play knight b6 or castle here. My idea was to castle, play knight c3, d5, go for a line with queen c2 and rook d1. But all that was put on the back burner after c6. Now, this is certainly a playable move. However, it is a bit passive. And the main reason is, if you want to play c6 or lines with c6, it's actually better to do it earlier in the opening. If you go back to like here, if you want to play c6, you should do it here and play d5, which is a very solid line for black in and against the fianchetto variation. However, here it's too early. You want to put the knight on c6, you might want to keep c5 in reserve. There's no need to commit to c6 this early. You can castle as well. So already a slight concession. And here I get to play e4. Now usually when you play e4, black can take on c3, but here the knight has to retreat, so this is already a small plus for white. We have established these pawns here in the center, and we have an extra pawn in the center. So now my last move was h3. Now why didn't I castle? Why did I play h3? Here I am already starting the prophylactic play. This bishop, the most natural square, is g4, but I take it away. So it's already difficult to develop this bishop. So what to do? My opponent castled, I castle, and he decided to develop his knight, but where to develop it? Knight a to d7. This bishop doesn't really have a square. This is not a good square. It's vulnerable to, I mean, where do you put your knight? You get vulnerable to some d5 pushes, bishop e6, knight c3, and you can't put your knight on d7 because d5 already. Also there's knight g5. It's not a good square. So knight 8 to d7. But the problem with this, okay, you get a knight out, but you leave and you lack in development with a bishop on c8. So after this, I played queen c2. It felt to me that black's natural break here is e5, and I want my rook on d1 to line up against the queen. So this felt like a natural move, and incidentally the computer agrees, queen c2 is the best move. e5 by black, and here we go back to the theme of giving your opponent options. I kind of want to play bishop e3, but first I played bishop to g5. Now why is that? Well, I am giving my opponent options. If my opponent played queen e8, but if he plays some other move like f6, I will put my bishop on e3. What have I accomplished? I believe that f6 doesn't improve black's position. You have blocked this diagonal for the bishop, and you have also weakened this diagonal on the light squares. I like it for white, so I take it as a move gained, not lost. Also, if you play bishop f6, I can take, certainly, and the black squares are weakened because you need the black square bishop. I can also play bishop h6. You have to react and play from there. So definitely options that I liked, but my opponent went queen to e8. Okay, fair enough. I got my bishop out, and this isn't necessarily, you know, anything to worry about. But now what to do? Keeping with the theme of the game, I want to play against my opponent's pieces. I feel like I've got two pawns in the center against one. Let's put another color here, blue color. So I want to keep that advantage, a small space and slight development advantage. And I want to play against the pieces. What is a bad piece for black? Doesn't have a lot of squares. The knight on b6. I played a4. Now normally when you play against a knight on b6 or a knight on g6, you want a piece either on g3 or b3. Well, a pawn, because in both cases you are covering a lot of the squares that the knight can go to. But here I don't really have to, because I'm covering the squares, and I play a4. My idea is simply to play a5, and it turns out this knight does not have a lot of squares. What to do? I mean, a5 wins the knight, so black plays a5 himself. But every pawn move has a consequence, and the consequence of this pawn move is that this knight has been undermined. There's no longer a pawn covering this knight, so there's only this knight covering the other knight. So now I retreat, bishop to e3, and this knight is feeling the heat. So if this knight were to move, like knight f6, I can take on e5, the knight on b6 is hanging. Not a good deal for black. But it also means that if this knight can't move, then this bishop can't move. So I'm playing against my opponent's development and preventing it. So what to do for black? My opponent took a d4. I mean, what else? I'll take with a knight. And now you have to find a move. Again, you can't move this because there is indirect pressure on b6. I have tactics with knight takes c6, followed by bishop takes on b6. So again, this knight can't move, and consequently the bishop can't move, and therefore the rooks can't connect. So that's my idea, playing against my opponent's pieces. Queen e7, and here again I have to think, what does my opponent want? The most natural move for me is to play rook d1. It's an open file. However, if I do that, my opponent might play queen to c5. And he can do that because it works out tactically. If I take, he's already simplifying. I might want to do something against this, utilizing the diagonal, but knight takes c6 is met with knight takes a4, and the problem on b2 means I gain nothing from this. So the natural move doesn't work, and we found out that black wants to play queen to c5. So keeping with the theme, I want to prevent my opponent's ideas. What do we do? Rook c1, not allowing queen to c5, knight c5 or anything on c5. So still my opponent has to solve his development. Again, this can't move because knight takes c6, this will hang. So my opponent went queen to f6. Another queen move, but what is the idea? Well, before going on, let's go back. Let's get the correct board color actually. So he went queen f6. But what happens if queen to b4? It looks active, but here I had planned knight to b3, and my idea is bishop to d2. I'm attacking the pawn on a5. Can't really do much about it, and it turns out that tactically I can allow knight takes a4 because of bishop to d2. Has to keep an eye on the knight on a4, otherwise it drops, and now bishop f1. You can't keep the knight on a4, and white wins. So going back to queen to f6. What is our opponent's idea? He put the queen on his diagonal, lining up with the bishop. His idea must be c5 and take on b2. So now, my move now might not be the best one, but it's keeping with the theme of the game. Prophylaxis and giving your opponent options. And even though it's not the best move, I really like this move. I played rook to a2, simply covering the b2 pawn. And I am asking my opponent to make a move. Still, you have this problem with the knight on d7, bishop to c8. You can't move the knight because the knight to b6 is hanging, and you can't you can't develop the bishop to c8. So you have problems. My opponent thought for a while and played rook e8. He couldn't solve the problem. Okay, while this looks a bit artificial, it gives me time to do something about my development. I develop a knight. Note that I can't go to c3 because knight to c4, which hits this one, and I have some problems. So knight e2. Again, my opponent thought for a while. He played queen to d6. This attacks d4, but note once again that he hasn't solved this problem yet. I bring my other knight to protect d4, and yet another queen move. And you know, he's moved his queen a lot, but it shows how difficult it is for black to move. He can't find proper moves. However, lining up on the e file, I can't play f4 just yet. f4 is a desirable move, get my pawn majority moving. Now f4 e5, I get some dynamic play, but f4 too early allows knight to d5, and this will hang. So no rush, I play rook d1. The rook has done its job on the c file. Now I have a knight here. There's no queen c5 or knight c5, so I'll move the rook to the open file. Finally, my opponent finds a regrouping idea. Knight goes to b8. And he's utilizing the position of my queen and my rook. I would like to take on c6 and take on b6, but in this case there is knight to b4 with a very strong fork on my queen and my rook, so I can't do that. So it turns out his idea is to take with a knight on c6, so prophylaxis once again. His idea is knight to b4, how do we prevent that? Rook a to a1. The rook on a2 has done its job, now it connects with the other rook. b2 is no longer a problem. The rook is ready to come to perhaps a more useful square. Now I'm threatening to take on c6 and take on b6, so something must be done. He played knight 6 to d7. Note that, as we mentioned, knight a6 looks desirable coming here, but knight takes c6 hits the queen, and then we take this. Doesn't have time. So he played knight 6 to d7. Queen d2. I'm hitting the pawn on a5. Some ideas of bishop8-6, and in general just moving two pieces, heavy pieces on an open file. Must be useful. Knight f6, hitting my pawn here. I protect it. So now this is under attack and he protects. So now more prophylaxis. My opponent might be going for knight d5 when this again is unprotected if I take, so I'll play bishop f2. Always trying to block my opponent's ideas. Now I think after all this we're only slightly better, but we prevented all of our opponent's ideas. The prophylactic play has led to me having a slight time edge, which is very important in modern chess, and also I have more dynamic chances. These pawns are not doing much. If you play c5, you leave this square open. Not much else to do with these pawns. Meanwhile, these pawns have a lot of dynamic potential. I can play f4 e5, f4 e5, g4 f5. Much more potential, and the space is on white's side, and still black hasn't really solved the development issues. Bishop to b7. Finally the bishop gets something to do, but now rook a to c1. Both rooks are on open files. I think white's play is really logical. Rook to c8. It's really hard to recommend anything else. But now I played knight e2. Now I felt this opened my d file for my heavy pieces, and this opens up for the bishop, attacking this, and also felt like my knight was somewhat better on c3, especially because to prevent this attack on b6, c5 is a logical move, and now knight to c3. And these are my ideal squares, b5 and c4. I want to put my knights there. If I can do that, Kareem position. Knight to c6. And now I felt like this guy has done its job. Earlier it was preventing a piece coming to c5, protecting a piece on d4, but now where is it going? Black is preventing anything, so I need to reroute that knight. So queen e2 is setting up knight d2 to c4. Knight to b4 was played. Knight e2. Going for that route. Knight to c4. The other knight to b5. We have bishop to c6. And knight to c4. A juicy, juicy square. I'm hitting the pawn on b6. So rook b8 was played here. I started moving my pawns. f4. Knight to e8. Knight to b5, and it seems like all of my pieces are getting good positioning. This is what I wanted. The queenside majority of black is just locked down, and all the dynamics are with my pawns on the king side. Play continued. Rook to d8, b3, Not really necessary, just a small tightening move. We're in time pressure. I protect the knight on c4. There's no hanging pawn on b2. The game goes on. Queen to e6. And again, I'm better here. I don't really need to do much. I have better time. I just play king h2. Usual move. Covering this, covering this. Why is it usual? Well, it's hard for black to move. We keep a space advantage. We keep all the dynamics. It's hard for black to do anything. He played bishop f8. And now, bishop f3. And this is what I call a creeping move. Creeping. I just gave the bishop slightly more scope. It's already on this diagonal. But on f3, I also can come to g4. Another diagonal. And note, the small king move is covering the pawn on h3, enabling this move. So again, the onus is on black to do something. He started to crack, trying to find forcing moves. He took on a b5, pawn takes, but now this is a super piece. Knight to c7, bishop to g4, going to this diagonal. And perhaps I can keep the game going. Black with queen e8, I take on d8, take on b6. Let's see the line. This was perhaps black's, last chance. Queen e8, I take something like this. Black is certainly still alive, but my pawn structure is much better. I still keep his pawn majority on the lock and bay here with one pawn. I have all the dynamics going in my position and the bishop here. Just imagine this bishop, rerouting to c4. What a monster bishop. This is better for white, no doubt. Instead, my opponent played f5. And this turned out to be too much for black to handle. Took on f5. He has to take on e2. And after some forced moves here, he took on d1. Knight takes b5 and knight to e5. I'm hitting the knight on b5. The pawns are equal, but it turns out that out of just superior positioning and better pieces, I get a strong kingside attack. He moved the knight to c3, and now bishop to c4, check. King moved. I can play rook d7, but knight f7 is also strong. That's what I played. It's actually a better move. King g7 and rook d7. And white is completely winning. So it doesn't look like much, but just by preventing my opponent's ideas, by giving him choices, I never had any problems. I was never in, there was no counterplay. I was never in, never risked losing. And now we're just completely winning. Rook to e8, I took on g6, took with the king. He doesn't want to give me a discover check. Here I had some time trouble, so I first repeated knight to h8. After king to h6, I repeat. And then I found the winning idea. I play knight to e5 check. And after king h6, knight to g4. And with my bishop coming to f7. Next move, this game is over. So my opponent resigned. So I hope this game was helpful to clarify the topic of prophylaxis. Always prevent your opponent's ideas. We can go all the way to the start when I play h3. This is already playing against the bishop on c8. And so many moves after that, we prevented our opponent's idea. And just going quickly forward. Note how the bishop on c8 and the knight on d7 couldn't really do anything because I played against the pieces. This was a piece that needed to be covered, and therefore these pieces really couldn't move. So from this, I just kept on preventing my opponent's ideas, built up a slight advantage, and from there my opponent didn't really have any active ideas. and in the end he cracked. This is how I feel like many of my games against players like 200 points lower rated than me. This is how it goes. This is how I wanted to go, and hopefully this helped you somewhat to understand the concept of giving your opponent options and preventing your opponent's ideas. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.